Galactic Council chamber buzzed with barely contained laughter as Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped up to the crystalline podium. Her simple gray uniform looked shabby next to the elaborate ceremonial armor of the Vorthon delegation, the flowing silk robes of the Etherian representatives, and the gleaming biomechanical suits worn by the Synthetics Union. At barely 5.5 feet tall, she appeared tiny in the vast chamber that housed delegates from 47 different species across the galaxy. "Honored delegates," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrices embedded in every seat. "I come before you today not as a supplicant, but as a friend offering counsel. The human race formally requests that all member species avoid the Kepler 442 system. Our long-range sensors have detected anomalous readings that suggest extreme danger." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. The Vorthon War Prime, his forearms crossed in a gesture of dismissal, spoke without standing. "Little human, your species has been part of this council for what, 12 standard cycles? We have explored the galaxy for over 3,000 cycles. What could your primitive sensors possibly detect that our advanced technology has missed?" Sarah's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "Prime Korthak, with respect, our sensors operate on principles that may be unfamiliar to your technology. We've detected massive gravitational distortions and energy signatures that suggest something ancient and hostile resides in that system." The chamber erupted in genuine laughter now. The melodic chimes of Etherian amusement mixed with the grinding mechanical sounds that passed for humor among the synthetics. Even the normally diplomatic Aquarians were pulsing their bioluminescent patches in patterns Sarah recognized as their version of chuckling. Council Speaker Veltar, an 8-foot-tall being whose crystalline form shifted through various shades of blue, called for order. "Ambassador Chen, while we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm for galactic safety, perhaps humanity should focus on matters more suited to your developmental level. The Kepler 442 system contains 17 habitable worlds and resource deposits worth approximately 40 billion galactic credits. Your request to declare it off limits based on unsubstantiated sensor readings is, frankly, absurd." "Speaker Veltar, I understand the economic implications, but—" "Economic implications?" War Prime Korthak stood now, his massive frame towering over the assembly. "Human, do you have any idea what you're suggesting? The 9th Fleet of the Vorthon Empire has already claimed salvage rights to that system. These are battle-tested warriors who conquered the Sigma Draconis cluster and brought down the Titan-class vessels of the old hegemony. You expect us to turn back because of readings from sensors that can barely detect asteroids beyond your own solar system?" Sarah looked around the chamber, seeing the same dismissive expressions on every alien face. The Kelnari delegate was actually cleaning his claws, not even bothering to pay attention anymore. The 3-headed Cerebrands had turned 2 of their heads away in a gesture of supreme indifference. "I see," Sarah said quietly. "Then let me be absolutely clear. This is not a request. This is a warning. Something sleeps in the Kepler 442 system, something that should not be awakened. Our analysis suggests it has been dormant for millions of years, but recent solar activity in that region may be disturbing its rest." The Synthetic Union representative, designation ZX7741, spoke in its flat, emotionless tone. "Ambassador Chen, your species has exhibited concerning paranoid tendencies since joining the Council. First, you insisted on maintaining your own military despite galactic law requiring disarmament. Then you refused to share your encryption technologies. Now you make baseless claims about mythical threats. Perhaps Earth would benefit from a psychological evaluation by our specialists." "We're not paranoid," Sarah replied, feeling her patience finally fray. "We're careful. There's a difference." "Careful?" The Etherian Prime consciousness spoke through its chosen vessel, a being that looked like living starlight contained in a vaguely humanoid shape. Humans, your species has existed in space for less than 2 centuries. We have records spanning 50,000 years. If there were ancient threats in the Kepler system, don't you think we would know? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. When the Ninth Fleet enters that system, I hope for all our sakes that I'm wrong. But when they don't come back, when your long-range communications fall silent and your mighty warriors simply vanish, remember this moment. Remember that humanity tried to warn you. Threats now? War Prime Korthak's voice was dangerous. Human, are you suggesting your pathetic species has something to do with any potential danger in that system? Not threats, Prime. Just experience. Sarah gathered her data tablets and turned to leave. You see, every species in this chamber has known peace for so long that you've forgotten what real predators look like. But humans remember. We spent our entire evolutionary history as both hunter and hunted. We know the smell of danger because we've lived with it for millions of years. She paused at the chamber door and looked back. The Kepler 442 system smells like death, War Prime. I hope your fleet is ready for what they're going to find. As the door sealed behind her, the chamber buzzed with outraged conversation. Within hours, the official response was transmitted to Earth. Humanity's warning was formally rejected. And any interference with the Ninth Fleet's mission would be considered an act of war against the Vorthon Empire. 3 days later, Admiral Marcus Torres sat in his command chair aboard the Earth ship Determination, watching long-range sensor displays from his position at the edge of the Kepler system. The bridge crew was unusually quiet, their faces grim as they monitored the Vorthon fleet's approach. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Jang reported from the sensor station, the Ninth Fleet has just crossed the heliopause. They're proceeding toward the 4th planet at standard approach velocity. Torres nodded grimly. Any change in the anomalous readings? Sir, whatever's down there just got a lot more active. Gravitational distortions have increased by 300%, and we're detecting massive energy buildups on the planetary surface. The Admiral opened a channel to Earth Command. Control, this is Determination. Vorthon Ninth Fleet has entered the inner system. Recommend we withdraw to minimum safe distance and prepare emergency buoys. Negative, Determination, came the reply. Orders are to observe and record. Earth Command wants full documentation of whatever happens next. Torres understood. If humanity was right about the danger, they would need proof to show the Galactic Council. If they were wrong, Earth would need to explain why they'd positioned a military vessel in the system against express Council orders. Contact from the Ninth Fleet, Admiral, Communications Officer Patel announced. War Prime Korthak is demanding we withdraw immediately or face consequences. No response, Torres ordered. Let them focus on what's coming. On the main screen, they could see the Vorthon fleet in formation. 12 massive dreadnoughts, 36 cruisers, and over 100 smaller vessels. It was enough firepower to level a moon, crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. Admiral? Zhang's voice was tight with tension. I'm reading massive electromagnetic pulses from the 4th planet's surface. Something big is powering up down there. Torres leaned forward in his chair. The next few minutes would either vindicate humanity's warning or brand them as paranoid fools in the eyes of the galaxy. All stations prepare for emergency jump. If this goes bad, we need to be ready to run. On the sensor display, the Vorthon fleet continued its approach toward the 4th planet, unaware that something ancient and terrible was stirring in the depths below. Something that had been waiting for millions of years for visitors to arrive, something that was finally waking up. The first signs something was wrong came from the Vorthon scout ships. Lieutenant Commander Zhang's hands flew over her console as alarms began sounding across the bridge of the Determination. Admiral, I'm losing telemetry from the Vorthon advance scouts. Their signals just stopped. Admiral Torres stood from his command chair, studying the tactical display. 3 red dots representing Vorthan scout vessels had simply vanished from the screen. No explosion signatures, no debris fields, no distress calls. They were there 1 second and gone the next. "Could be communication interference," suggested Commander Harrison from the tactical station. "The electromagnetic activity from the planet has been increasing steadily." "No, sir." Zhang shook her head, her face pale. "I'm still tracking their reactor signatures on gravimetric sensors. The ships are there, but they're not responding to any communications. It's like the crews just disappeared." On the main display, the bulk of the Ninth Fleet continued its approach to the 4th planet. The massive Vorthon dreadnoughts moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the alien sun. From this distance, they looked invincible. "Admiral," Communications Officer Patel called out, "I'm picking up a transmission from War Prime Korthak's flagship. He's trying to raise his scouts." "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled with the guttural Vorthan language, then the translation matrix kicked in. "Scout Wing Alpha, report status immediately. Scout Wing Alpha, respond." There was a pause. Then Korthak's voice again, harder now. "All ships, maintain formation and continue approach. Engineering teams to ready status. Something is interfering with our communications." Torres exchanged glances with his senior staff. They all knew it wasn't communications interference. The 4th planet of Kepler 442 hung before them like a malevolent eye. Its surface was a swirling mass of dark clouds and violent storms, but beneath that chaos, their sensors had been detecting massive artificial structures for days, structures that predated any known civilization by millions of years. "Admiral, the energy readings from the planet just spiked again," Zhang reported. "Whatever's down there is drawing power from the planet's core. The electromagnetic field has increased by over 400% in the last hour." "And the gravitational distortions?" "Getting worse, sir. I'm detecting space-time fluctuations around the planet that shouldn't be possible with current physics." Torres nodded grimly. He'd seen the classified files from Earth's deep space monitoring stations. Humanity had been tracking anomalous signals from this system for over 50 years, ever since they'd developed quantum entanglement communication arrays. The signals were mathematical in nature, complex beyond anything humans could create, and they pulsed in patterns that suggested vast intelligence. The Galactic Council had dismissed Earth's concerns as the paranoid fantasies of a young species, but humans had learned to trust their instincts. It's what had kept them alive during their violent evolution. "Movement on the planet's surface," Zhang announced, her voice tight with tension. "I'm detecting massive structures rising from beneath the cloud layer. Admiral, these things are enormous. The largest one is over 300 kilometers long." The main screen shifted to show long-range visual sensors focused on the planet. Through the swirling atmospheric chaos, they could see dark shapes emerging from the surface. They moved with purpose, ancient geometries unfolding like mechanical flowers blooming in reverse. "Dear God," whispered Commander Harrison, "what are those things?" Before anyone could answer, the Vorthan fleet reached weapons range of the planet. War Prime Korthak's voice boomed across the communication channels again, this time addressing the unknown entities directly. "Attention unidentified vessels. You are in violation of Galactic Council law. This system has been claimed by the Vorthan Empire under standard salvage protocols. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response was immediate and terrible. The planet's surface erupted in light as hundreds of energy beams lanced upward toward the Vorthan fleet. But these weren't normal weapons. The beams seemed to bend space itself, creating corridors of twisted reality that reached out like grasping fingers. "Admiral, those energy beams are moving faster than light," Zhang reported in disbelief. "That's impossible. But I'm tracking them at roughly 10 times the speed of light." The first beam struck a Vorthan cruiser, and the massive warship simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased from reality, as if it had never been there at all. The second beam caught two more ships in its path, and they vanished just as completely. "All ships! Evasive maneuvers!" Korthak's voice had lost its confident edge. "Return fire! All weapons! Maximum intensity!" The Ninth Fleet's response was immediate and devastating. Hundreds of plasma cannons and particle beam weapons opened fire on the planet's surface, releasing enough destructive energy to crack a moon in half. The space around the planet lit up like a miniature star as the Vorthan weapons struck their targets. The ancient structures on the planet's surface absorbed the attack without even slowing down. "No damage," Zhang reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "Admiral, those weapons should have turned half that planet into molten glass. The structures didn't even register an impact." More energy beams erupted from the planet, moving in impossible spirals that seemed to fold space-time around them. Each beam that touched a Vorthan ship resulted in the same outcome: complete and instantaneous erasure. "Retreat!" Korthak's voice was desperate now. "All ships, emergency jump, retreat to minimum safe distance." But it was too late. The ancient entities had awakened fully, and they were no longer content to simply defend themselves. The massive structures that had emerged from the planet's surface began to separate, revealing themselves as individual ships of incomprehensible design. Each one dwarfed the largest Vorthan dreadnought, their hulls covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Admiral, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions," Zhang called out. "Those ships are generating artificial gravity wells. The Vorthan fleet can't jump to hyperspace." On the main screen, they watched in horrified fascination as the Ninth Fleet found itself trapped. The ancient ships moved with fluid grace despite their enormous size, surrounding the Vorthan formation like predators circling wounded prey. What happened next would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. The ancient ships didn't destroy the Vorthan fleet in any conventional sense. Instead, they seemed to unmake them, unraveling the very atomic structure of the mighty warships with weapons that operated beyond known physics. Ships that had survived countless battles simply dissolved into their component particles, which were then absorbed by the alien vessels. "They're harvesting them," Commander Harrison said in a sick whisper. "Those things are actually harvesting the ships and crews." In less than 10 minutes, the entire Ninth Fleet was gone. 12 dreadnoughts, 36 cruisers, and over 100 smaller vessels had simply ceased to exist. 40,000 Vorthan warriors, considered the finest military force in the galaxy, had vanished without firing a single effective shot. The ancient ships hung motionless around the planet for several minutes, as if savoring their victory. Then, one by one, they began to descend back toward the surface, disappearing beneath the roiling clouds like nightmares returning to sleep. "Admiral," Patel said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission." "From who?" I'm not sure, sir. It's coming from the direction of the planet, but the signal is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's not electromagnetic, not quantum entanglement, not even gravitational waves. It's something else entirely." Torres felt ice form in his stomach. "Put it through." The bridge fell silent as an alien presence touched their minds directly, bypassing their communications equipment entirely. When it spoke, each crew member heard it in their own language, their own voice, as if their thoughts were being turned against them. "Younger races," the voice said, ancient beyond measure and cold as the void between stars. "You wake the shepherds from their long dream. We who guided the first civilizations, we who watched empires rise and fall like waves upon a shore, we who grew tired of your endless wars and chose to sleep until the galaxy learned wisdom." Torres found his voice with difficulty. We tried to warn them. Humanity attempted to prevent this incursion." "Yes," the voice replied, and there was something like approval in its tone. The young hunters remember the old lessons. Your species knows the scent of predators because you have been both predator and prey. This is wisdom the galaxy has forgotten. The presence in their minds shifted, becoming somehow less oppressive. Return to your council, young hunters. Tell them the shepherds watch still. Tell them that those who disturb our sleep will be harvested. Their atoms return to the cosmic cycle to birth new stars and worlds. But tell them also that those who show wisdom, those who remember that the universe holds dangers beyond their understanding, these may yet earn our protection when the true darkness comes. True darkness? Torres asked, but the presence was already fading. The harvest of the Ninth Fleet was but an echo of what approaches from beyond the galaxy's edge, came the final whisper. Prepare, young hunters. Your time of testing comes soon. Then the alien presence was gone, leaving the bridge crew staring at each other in shocked silence. On the main screen, the planet appeared normal again, its storms calming as if nothing had happened. But where the mighty Ninth Fleet had been, there was only empty space and the distant glitter of stars. Set course for Earth, Torres ordered quietly. Maximum speed. The Council needs to hear about this. As the Determination jumped to hyperspace, its sensors recorded one final piece of data. Deep within the planet's core, massive energy signatures were powering down, returning to dormancy after millions of years of sleep. But they remained ready to wake again, should anyone else be foolish enough to disturb their rest. The shepherds had returned to their dreams, but they were dreams filled with ancient knowledge and terrible purpose. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, something else stirred in response to their awakening, drawn by the scent of harvested souls and the promise of fresh prey. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the same crystalline podium where she had delivered her warning 3 weeks earlier. But the atmosphere was completely different now. Gone were the dismissive laughter and condescending smirks. In their place sat 47 species of stunned, terrified delegates who could barely process what they had witnessed. The holographic display floating above the chamber showed the final moments of the Ninth Fleet in stark detail. Every delegate watched in horror as the ancient ships emerged from Kepler 442's surface and systematically erased 40,000 Vorthon warriors from existence. The footage, captured by Earth's observation vessel, played in absolute silence. War Prime Korthak was not present. The surviving members of the Vorthon delegation sat with their forearms folded in gestures of mourning, their usually aggressive demeanor replaced by something Sarah had never seen in their species before: genuine fear. The Determination maintained position at maximum sensor range throughout the encounter, Sarah reported, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrices. Our crew recorded everything, including the final communication from the entities that destroyed the fleet. Speaker Veltar's crystalline form had shifted to a deep, troubled purple. Ambassador Chen, you're claiming these shepherds spoke to your crew directly? Not spoke, Speaker. They communicated through some form of direct mental contact. Our xenopsychology team has analyzed the crew's testimony extensively. The message was consistent across all 43 witnesses. The Etherian Prime consciousness leaned forward, its starlight form flickering with agitation. And they claimed to be the guides of ancient civilizations? Beings who watch the rise and fall of empires? That's correct. They also warned of something they called the true darkness approaching from beyond the galaxy's edge. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. The Cerebrand delegate turned all 3 of his heads toward Sarah, speaking in perfect unison. Ambassador, our species maintains the most comprehensive historical records in the galaxy. We have no mention of any shepherds in our archives. With respect, Delegate Zenth, how far back do your records extend? approximately 80,000 standard years. The shepherds spoke of watching civilizations for millions of years. They may predate your earliest records by several orders of magnitude. The Synthetic Union representative, ZX7741, spoke in its characteristically flat tone. Ambassador Chen, you previously stated that humanity attempted to warn this council of the danger in the Kepler system. Please explain how your species detected a threat that our advanced sensor networks missed. Sarah had been dreading this question, but she knew it was inevitable. Our detection methods are unconventional. Humanity developed them during our isolation before joining the galactic community. Elaborate. Sarah looked around the chamber, seeing the suspicious faces of delegates who were finally beginning to understand that they might not know Earth's capabilities as well as they thought. We call it threat assessment through pattern recognition. During our evolutionary history, humans who could sense danger survived. Those who couldn't became extinct. We've developed technology that amplifies these instinctive abilities. You're talking about intuition, the Aquarian representative said, his bioluminescent patches pulsing in patterns of disbelief. You're claiming your species makes strategic decisions based on feelings? Not feelings, Delegate Merthak, subconscious processing of incomplete data. Human brains excel at recognizing patterns even when they can't consciously identify what those patterns mean. The Kepler system triggered every warning sign our species has evolved to recognize over millions of years. The chamber buzzed with conversation as delegates struggled to understand how primitive instinct could outperform advanced technology. War Prime Korthak's replacement, Sub-Commander Velnoth, spoke for the first time since taking his position. Human Chen, his voice was heavy with grief and barely controlled rage. You knew. Your species knew exactly what would happen to our fleet, and you said nothing specific enough to stop us. Sub-Commander, we warned the Council that something ancient and hostile resided in that system. We requested that all member species avoid the area. The Vorthon Empire chose to proceed, despite our warnings. Warnings! Velnoth slammed all four fists on his delegation's table. You spoke of sensor readings and anomalous data. You never mentioned ancient superbeings with the power to erase entire fleets. Sarah felt a flash of anger. Sub-Commander, with all due respect, what did you expect us to say? That humanity had developed mystical powers to commune with ancient aliens? Would that have been more believable than sensor data? But you knew more than you revealed? We suspected, Sarah admitted. Our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking mathematical signals from that system for over 50 years. Signals that indicated vast intelligence, but we had no proof they were connected to any physical threat. Speaker Veltar called for order as the chamber erupted in agitated conversation. Ambassador Chen, why didn't humanity share this information with the Council? Because we tried to share our encryption technology, our military protocols, and our threat assessment methodologies when we first joined this body. We were told our methods were primitive and unnecessary. The Council seemed to believe that galactic civilization had evolved beyond the need for such precautions. The Kelnari delegate, who had been silent throughout the session, finally spoke. You're saying we've become soft. That peace has made us weak. I'm saying that peace is a luxury that requires constant vigilance to maintain. Humanity has never known a time without predators, so we never stopped watching for them. The Synthetic Union representative processed this information for several seconds before responding. Ambassador Chen, you mentioned that the shepherds warned of a greater threat. Please provide details. Sarah activated another holographic display, this one showing deep space sensor readings from multiple Earth monitoring stations. 3 days after the incident at Kepler 442, our long-range sensors detected massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the galaxy. Something enormous is approaching from intergalactic space. How enormous? Speaker Veltar asked. Our estimates suggest artificial structures roughly the size of small moons, dozens of them, moving in formation at approximately 30% of light speed. The chamber fell silent again. Even the usually verbose Etherian delegation had nothing to say. The shepherds warned that these entities were drawn by the harvest of the Ninth Fleet, Sarah continued. They seem to feed on conflict and destruction. The shepherds called them the true darkness and suggested they've been waiting for an opportunity to enter our galaxy. Sub-Commander Vel Noth's voice was hollow. How long until they arrive? At their current speed, approximately 18 months. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a death sentence. 18 months to prepare for entities that made the shepherds look like protectors rather than threats. The Cerebran delegate spoke again, all three heads focused intently on Sarah. Ambassador Chen, what does humanity propose we do? Sarah had been preparing for this moment since the day the Ninth Fleet vanished. Earth formally requests permission to implement galaxy-wide defense protocols. We have experience dealing with existential threats, and we have technologies specifically designed for asymmetric warfare. What kind of technologies? The Aquarian representative's patterns had shifted to deep blue, indicating serious concern. Weapons that don't rely on conventional physics. Strategies that assume your enemy is smarter, stronger, and more advanced than you are. Humanity spent our entire history fighting opponents who should have been able to destroy us, and we learned to win anyway. Speaker Veltar's form shifted through several colors as he processed this information. You're asking for military command authority over the entire Galactic Alliance. I'm asking for the chance to keep everyone alive. The shepherds showed mercy because they recognized humanity as fellow predators, beings who understood the nature of the universe. But these new entities won't be so discriminating. They'll harvest every living thing in the galaxy if we give them the chance. The chamber erupted in debate. Delegates who had dismissed humanity as primitive upstarts just weeks before were now faced with the possibility that Earth might be their only hope for survival. The Vorthan sub-commander stood slowly, his grief transforming into grim determination. The Vorthan Empire supports humanity's proposal. Our warriors are gone, but our industrial capacity remains. We offer all our resources to Earth's defense efforts. One by one, other delegations began to voice their support. The Etherians offered their advanced energy manipulation technologies. The synthetics pledged their manufacturing capabilities. Even the proud Aquarians agreed to share their biotechnology research. As the votes were tallied, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of the day they would be accepted as equals in the galactic community. They had never imagined that acceptance would come at such a terrible price. Motion carried, Speaker Veltar announced. Earth is hereby granted emergency military authority over all member species and their resources. May the ancestors preserve us all. As delegates began filing out of the chamber to prepare for humanity's defense initiatives, Sarah remained at the podium, staring at the tactical displays showing the approaching threat. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, ancient horrors were coming to harvest everything the galaxy's civilizations had built. But they were about to discover something the universe had forgotten. When humans were backed into a corner with nowhere to run, they became the most dangerous predators in existence. The galaxy had mocked Earth's warnings and ignored humanity's caution. Now they would learn why humans had survived every extinction event their violent world had thrown at them, and why sometimes the youngest species in the galaxy could teach the oldest ones new lessons about survival. The true war was about to begin, and humanity intended to win it, no matter what the cost.